Hello, everyone. Welcome to EP Lunchtime Chats. This is where we give you a peek behind the scenes at the Denver Museum of Nature and Science so you can see what sort of conversations we have in the back rooms of the museum. And today we're going to talk about the compelling topic of why are there actors in my science museum? When the museum gets back to normal, you can come in and you can see all sorts of theatrical productions. You might see an entire production that's fully scripted with costumes and props. You might see someone dressed as if they are from hundreds of years ago and they will be speaking in the appropriate accent, and you can interact with someone from hundreds of years ago. Or you may see demonstrations or classes taught using a whole variety of theatrical techniques. So today we're going to talk about why we use those techniques, how they're effective, and whatever else comes up. So I'd like to introduce my panel. The four people you see on your screen are all educator performers at the Denver Museum of Nature and Science. And I'd like to introduce them and have them share some of the strangest, most interesting, funniest feedback they've ever gotten after a performance. And let's start with Kenya.
All right, can you hear me now? Are we good? Awesome. So I've been thinking about this question, and I feel like I've gotten some pretty good feedback and positive feedback when I've done a performance. But the most memorable, interesting thing that happened during a performance and the feedback after was when I played Eveline in The Wiz. And it's a pretty huge part, but that entire day, I was sick. I had got food poisoning. And so I always believe that the show must go on. So I try to, take vitamins and get water and try to, replenish myself to get ready for the show. And in the second act, I'm only in the second act. So it was really good for me to rest up in the first act. But when the second act came, right before I got on stage, I threw up everywhere, got on stage, danced, sang, got off stage, or melted, she melts. And then I melted, and then I threw up again. And so I was so sick. But then afterwards, this was like the first show that my little girl, she was 5 years old at the time, was able to see me in. And after the show, she was so excited, like, Mommy, you were just so amazing. You were awesome. I didn't know you could do all those things. And in my stomach, I'm like, okay, yeah, awesome. And so it was just like having to persevere through that sickness to get that one little compliment at the end to say, hey, you were awesome, even though you went through a sickness performance. Nobody knew, but I would say that was the most interesting and rewarding story I have.
Amazing. Yeah, that's a real lesson. You never know exactly who you're going to connect with or who's going to get something out of whatever you put out there, whether you're a performer or anything else. And next we have Christina.
Hi, how are you doing? So I've had some very interesting feedback working in the museum, but one I really remember is a time that I was in Exhibition Health and I was doing the show Optical Illusions, and I was playing the part of Mindsight, which is a kind of a haughty professor type of person. And then right after that, I went downstairs and I was what's called the seasoned part in Science on the Fly. Again, I was kind of a haughty, putting everyone down kind of a persona. And it so happened that the same family who remembers happened to see me in both shows. And afterwards, the little girl that was there came up to me and she said, normally you're nice, but today you've been very mean. You should be nice. And about a week later, I was in the Discovery Zone and I was doing a story time and I was giving out tattoos, and she came up to me again and she said, okay, today you're being better. You should be more like this. So it's kind of funny.
Nice. Yeah, there's good directors out there everywhere. Keeping an eye on you. And then finally we have Michael.
Hey, I was thinking about this a lot because I've had several different personas in the museum, right? Being a first-person historical interpreter. One of the best experiences I had was when we were doing the Titanic. Titanic was the temporary exhibit. And when you came in, you were given a card and you became one of the passengers on the ship. Now, my passenger on the ship was a feather salesman named George Rosenshine, who was actually traveling under an alias of the name Thorne. All right, so George Thorne was really George Rosenshine, and he was a first-class passenger. So at the end of the exhibit, you would go to a wall and you would see how your passenger made out. All right, so either you lived or you didn't. And this little young man, he was quite upset because his passenger lived, but his mother's passenger died. And I was walking out, and he was a first-class passenger. So as a first-class passenger, I was willing to talk to him. His mother was not a first-class passenger, so I barely gave her the time of day, staying in character as I would. And so when I was leaving the exhibit and I was going for my break to have lunch, and the little boy was really, really upset. And as I was walking by, his mother stopped me and asked me to talk with this young boy. And I sat there and we had a conversation about how life was different and how sometimes your station in life dictates what happens to you. But yet we still feel for everybody around us. And you and I sat on the deck, smoking a cigar, waving goodbye, and listening to the band play on. And your mother and all the other passengers went to their just reward. And the little kid was like, okay, that's how life is. So that was a really moving experience for me.
And that's amazing. Really, really got them to transport themselves back there. Mine, I just want to share mine. Before I worked at DM&S, I was doing a show about Colorado history at a middle school. And a few weeks later, we got letters from some of the kids, one of which read, "Thank you for being funny and not boring like I thought you were going to be." I really appreciate that feedback. So for those of you watching, I am monitoring the Facebook feed. So if you have something you'd like to say to one of our performers or ask us a question, love to see it. Already, Kara said she loved the actors in the Sherlock Holmes exhibit. That may have included Michael Parker here. And Courtney says a pirate once tried to convince them to steal something from the exhibit during the pirate exhibition. So true story. That's great. That's in character. So the big question, theater and museums, why do we use theater? Christina, why do we use theater?
Well, you know, it is a strange juxtaposition, right? You think, why do we need actors in a museum? But the truth is that every day I see the people coming into the museum and I see them being involved in the process of the science experiments or performances we're doing. And in that way, because we're presenting it in an engaging way, the people, it seems to go, they kind of associate themselves with it better and they learn more and they're very interested all the time. And also we have a lot of members that come to the museum repeatedly and they might see the same show over and over again, but it's done differently by a different educator performer every time, keeping the science correct, of course. And they say every time they come in, they learn something new. And that's a big reason why we want to involve our guests in this process. And as an actor, I feel like you can really speak to different age groups of people. So if I'm presenting a science concept in the Discovery Zone, I can talk to the kids in a way they understand and really get them involved in a playful way. But if I'm in perhaps Space Odyssey with the older group of adults, then we can have a different type of conversation surrounding the same thing, and we can change the way we present things. And I think that's important.
Yeah, for sure. A live person can adapt to the person they're talking to in a way that a display case or a sign cannot. But there's even more going on where there's something really powerful in stories. Our brains are really wired to process information as stories, remember things that are stories, but even more than that, people connect to stories. In Kenya, as a actor, writer, drummer, poet, talk to us about the power of stories.
Sure. I believe in the power of storytelling, and I kind of found it out when I was a little younger, as a writer, as a poet, that like Christina said, people, they want to connect and see themselves in the story. And the more that you see yourself in the story, the better it can be retained, and you can learn. So sharing my writing as a spoken word artist, a lot of people connect with it, even if it's for you. Telling a story through a play or through a skit really connects the audience as well. So it's all about connection. Human connection is the power of storytelling to me, being able to relate to that story and putting yourself into that story.
Yeah, awesome. There's been some research, mostly recently in the past 10 or 15 years, about what actually happens in your brain when you hear a story as opposed to just information. And we're going to break it down to the very essential points. But basically, when you're just receiving information, only the centers in your brain that process, this is the right side. On the left side, there's a couple of areas in your brain that process language. And those areas are active when you're just hearing information. But when you're hearing a story, your whole brain lights up. Your emotional centers, your memory centers, all these things light up. And you are connecting with it, neurologically speaking, in a more complete way. We have some commenters who, Paula's kids always enjoy the actors in the Discovery Zone. And Courtney had a great time at the Titanic exhibit. And at the Titanic exhibit, we have our enactors, that draws on more theatrical technique. They fully design a costume that's period appropriate for the 1914, if they were on the Titanic. I may have that wrong. And they do all of the research, everything that they would know and they wouldn't know. And Michael has been in lots and lots of those roles. So Michael, can you talk to us about that experience?
Yeah, it's odd. I don't consider myself, quote unquote, a scientist, right? I came to the museum to do a 10-week gig as Benjamin Franklin's friend. So the historical enactors aren't usually real people. We are what we call a conglomerate of the time. So what our job is in the museum is to actually bring an experience to life, all right? So that you actually immerse yourself, if you're willing to play, into that experience. And I have to use humor a lot, because most of the time when you see, like, I'm going to use Jack Tar as an instance. Jack Tar is my sailor who sailed on the Beagle with Charles Darwin. Now, there is no such person in real life. If you look at the roster of the Beagle, you will not find Jack Tar. But Jack Tar is what they called sailors. So we make a compilation of the time, and then you have to share that experience with me. So I'll be walking around and all of a sudden, you'll see me and you won't necessarily know what the heck I am or what I'm doing there. So I use humor to put you at ease and to kind of teach you your role in our interaction. And I have to be able to realize whether you want to play or not. So I first will use a little humor, and if you then engage back, I know it's time to play, and we play. I think humor is disarming and puts you at ease enough that you will listen. You don't feel like there's a big risk involved. So I've broken the ice by using that humor. I'll tell a joke, or, just whatever to put you at ease. And then you and I can then have a genuine conversation. And when we have genuine conversation and add a story to it, all of those, like you said, Mitch, all of those parts of the brain ignite. And you're willing then to have an experience. I'm an experience giver, is what I consider myself. And I think that that's what the enactors do for our guests. So it's improv, and we have to read the audience really well. The audience has to be able to read us. So it's an interact.
I always, what I love about the enactors is they really bring you into the time in a complete way, where you might use a reference or something that they would not have known of, and they let you know that. They let you know their understanding of the science of the day, and it really, I don't know, I always find it brings me into the journey of science and knowledge, human history. Talia said that Michael does such a good Vasily Konovalenko, who is the artist who does the gems on the 3rd floor in the museum, that one time she did not recognize you.
It's Vasily Konovalenko, Vasily. And he was an artist who would take gems and turn them into pieces of art. And I do remember meeting this friend of yours, Talia. She was on the elevator, and I asked her if she knew where there was Dr. Stephen Nash. She had no idea who I was. Costume helped.
Amazing. Yeah. We have it. Mina points out that storytelling has been a part of the human experience as long as there have been humans, which is true. We think about, like, there was a time when the only way anyone learned anything was through stories. That was the only way human knowledge was collected and passed down. For most of human history, that's been the case. And then there's lots of different disciplines of storytelling. We've talked a little bit about poetry and acting. Christina, your professional performer experience was as a dancer on a cruise ship. And how have those skills helped you to share science knowledge or connect people with science stuff?
Yes, it's true. I was a dancer on a cruise ship. So, as with every art, when you're dancing, you're telling a story. I mean, every dance has a story around it. So when I was working on the cruise ship, it was a number of years ago, and the cruise ships weren't quite as big as they are now. Now you have mega ships, they're a little smaller, and a lot of the ships I worked on had more of a floor show experience. So I was really, really close to the audience members, and sometimes, we'd have that kind of experience where we would draw the audience members actually into the dance. I don't know if you've ever done that. So I really got used to, I guess, putting myself out there and working with the audience, I think, by dancing. And I think that's really helped me in the museum. I mean, it's very fun working in a museum. I actually started in the museum in a temporary exhibit as well. I started in one called Mythbusters. It was a 3-month run, and from there I became an educator performer. But a part of that also was doing the experiments and also drawing the audience in and having them play along with you. And I think that dancing training actually really, really helped me do that. So I'm kind of grateful for that.
Cool. Good to remember, everything you do has value. You can, if you use those experiences to learn and grow, you'll never know when they'll be useful. Also, you talked about opening up to people, and that's huge. If you want people to be vulnerable and accept you, you have to be vulnerable first. And a lot of performance techniques are really good at sort of opening that door and bringing people in. Kim said it was years ago, but they still remember the stories and experiences they had in the Ramses exhibit. That was years ago. So that's great. Creating lasting experiences. Great thing. So Kenya, we were talking a little earlier before we went live about how great teachers use performance techniques too, and really performing and teaching are not that different. Can you talk to us about that?
Sure. So performing and teaching, I feel that it goes hand in hand in order to get the information to your audience. to be more animated, to be more passionate about your work. I definitely believe in performance when it comes to any type of presentation. I think it's very important that your performance level is high because your audience is going to match that, or they may give you some pushback. But I think it's definitely important as a teacher to be able to perform and to control the audience at the same time. And working at the museum, I've learned that I had performance already, but being able to kind of handle the audience is something that I was juggling. So as a teacher and an actor, I think it's the same. You're conducting a performance for these people that you're gonna have to probably ring back in and have them gravitate to you so that you can get their attention. So yeah, I think it's extremely important. Like I said, my husband, he's a teacher too, so I see him do this every day, and I give him tips on what he can do to engage his performance as well. So it goes hand in hand, definitely.
Yeah, even right before I came on board here at the museum, there was a time when the educators and the performers were separate. And then they were brought together, and there was some pushback by some people, including our friend Michael Parker right here, Intel, and you can address the moment, but my understanding is that once the educators and the performers really paid attention to what each side was doing, they realized that it really wasn't that different. Is that your experience, Mike?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, Amanda, Arvid, and myself, we're the quote unquote senior actor educator performers. We did a you guys know we have our own 2-day seminar that we do, that the educator performers do for each other and the rest of our department. We did a little writing back and forth about using our tool bags, and how the actor and the teacher, the educator and the performer, both have the same tools in the bag. We just use it in a different way. We are an educator is a performer is an educator. It's not that different, although many of us are scared of that label. So, like I said, I don't consider myself quote unquote a scientist, but I am a scientist. We're all scientists. We're all educators. We're all performers. We just are afraid of labels. And if we take that label away and we just do, I think the most important thing that we do in the museum, and either as an educator or as a performer, is to be genuine. When we're genuine, the people around us, the audience around us, sees that what we're doing is a genuine act. And that genuine act resonates with the audience and with yourself. And that's where, as Kenya had mentioned, that brings in the connection. So we're really, all of us, whether we're visitors, educators, curators, what we're trying to do is impart our passion to the people around us and connect. And I think that that's what I learned when we came from upstairs to downstairs, and that group became a mishmash soup, and we didn't have any choice. So we started to see each other, see how our skills were very much the same. And I believe that the skills of all of us, whether we're paid professionals or people that come to the museum, we have something to share with one another. And I think that that's what we do.
Well said, well said. Since you brought Amanda up, just going to put her on the spot, which on this very Facebook page, you can find several videos from our colleague Amanda with fun activities to do with your kids. But Amanda is someone who has no interest in ever being in a play, has no interest in acting, doesn't want to wear a wig. But if you watch her teach a class, she displays mastery of all sorts of techniques that actors work for years to develop. So you're right, there's definitely a lot of overlap. Franklin has a question, which is, what's an unexpected experience that you've had being an actor in a museum? Christina, you have an unexpected experience.
Well, yes, I do. And actually, I'm going to actually tie into what Michael just said. So, as I mentioned, I was hired to do Mythbusters as an actor. And then when I actually started the museum, the performance and the education side was still separate. But when they joined together, I was actually asked to start moving into the educational classroom side of things. And I have to say, it kind of terrified me, the idea of actually running classes. But my unexpected experience is that I really, really enjoy it. And I have found that I can use a lot of the skills I have as an actor and a dancer in my classroom work. And that has surprised me. I never really thought that I was going to be a teacher along with an actor. And that's something that, you know, it's amazing, really, different things you can do in the museum.
Awesome. And yeah, you have an unexpected experience.
Well, when I started out, I've been with the museum a little over a year, and I started out in the census exhibit when it came out. And so I was really excited about doing the census exhibit, like, hey, I got this, I got the script, the flow, just gonna give it to them. And there was a lot of hecklers in the audience. And I wasn't expecting people to kind of talk back to you and say certain things to kind of throw you off your script. And you're like, wait, I wasn't expecting, wait, where was I? Gotta click, got it. So it was very unexpected for the hecklers to talk back during the performance.
I remember those hecklers well. And just to be clear, they weren't like stand-up comedy hecklers trying to make, I take that back. Some of them were trying to make the show about them, but it was more like they knew something already and they wanted to be a part of it. And so the skill that you have to learn is how to let people be a part of it without throwing off your whole script, which Kenya did brilliantly. I remember seeing her performances. All right, Michael, an unexpected experience.
I've had, you know, I've been at the museum for 14 years going on. I'm in my 14th year. So I've had lots of different unexpected experiences. One that was really interesting, again, I was in character walking the halls as my character AJ Rappaport, who is a newspaper reporter from Leadville, Colorado in 1908. So I was walking around and I was talking, and it happened to be Charles Darwin's birthday, which is February 12th, right? And I was walking around and I saw a lady, a woman visitor, and her young son. And I said, oh, by the way, did you realize it's Mr. Darwin's birthday? And the woman looked at me and said, we don't believe in Darwin. And I just didn't quite know how to react. I just said, well, today's his birthday, and walked away, you know. So I was not expecting someone at the museum to look at me and say, I don't believe in Charles Darwin. I might have gotten into a conversation about, I don't believe in evolution, but to not believe in Darwin kind of threw me. So that was a little unexpected right there.
Yeah, I recently learned about Charles Darwin that not only did he study and discover all these weird animals, he also ate them. He ate every animal he ever discovered. Galapagos tortoise, Darwin's rhea. He was a great lover of animals in many ways, many different ways.
I just did a little talk with the enactor, a story about how Charles Darwin found the lesser rhea, which is the Darwinian rhea, and it was because they were eating that. And by the way, a rhea is a flightless bird, very much like an ostrich, for anybody who doesn't know what a rhea is. But and it comes from South America. And they actually ate one for a Christmas dinner, and Darwin noticed that the hip was different, and then found the subspecies of the lesser rhea.
Fascinating. You gotta always keep your eye open. You're gonna find discoveries. Courtney asked if there's a certain time the actors are present. And in certain exhibits like Titanic or Mythbusters or Pirates, or more recently, Vikings, there should be actors on the floor all the time. And then other times in the museum, you just kind of have to get lucky, spot someone wandering around the diorama halls who looks like they're from 100 years ago. They'll have a badge so you know that they're not just someone with interesting fashion choices.
We actually now have usually an actor on the floor every day. There are 4 of us who are enactors on the floor, and it just depends on whether we're on break or what floor we happen to be, because we wander the halls. So you may be walking through and not see us, but almost every day you can see an enactor if you're looking hard enough.
So keep your eyes out once the museum is back to normal and functioning full on for people in weird garb. Well, that's about the end of our time. This has been so fun. Thank you so much for joining us. It's been great to talk to you all. We will be back next week, next Tuesday at noon, to talk about human body mysteries, things that we all do all the time and we don't understand, like hiccuping and yawning. And there's so many more. There's so many things we don't know about our own bodies. Thank you very much to the panel. Thank you everyone who joined us. This has been so fun. And yeah, have a wonderful day. Stay safe.